welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see
Sorry
you.
for being late.
Okay.
Let me help you with the luggage.
What happened?
Oh, nothing special. I'm okay.
Again, thanks for your time.
There are many ways to come to this marathon. You can pick the moment you want to start with, and then we go on.
You mean the past childhood or what?
Yes, a kind of reconstruction of things, but we can do it in an associative manner as well.
I thought about what is pressing on my mind most. I have a deep desire to sleep, to be unconscious, and in the mornings I have trouble getting up. I want to sleep more, but I don't take sleeping pills. It's as if I do a piece of work when I sleep. It started last year after I worked on a lot of films. I planned to do new drawings, and I left 3 months open for that. Every time you start a new work, there is a certain block, but you know it will end, and then you start, and the next problem will be how to stop doing the work. But this time it didn't start. I made an effort to have all this time, and then I didn't use it. I had film showings all over Europe, and I met nice people, but I was standing beside myself. I was on autopilot.
You weren't there for real.
At the university in Sevilla, they had a public Q&A, and I was listening to myself talking. It was very automatic. The tour went on, and when I came back, I decided that I had to do something. And then we met, and the idea for this came up. You know, I can film a Le Corbusier building, but I could film a dog shed instead, and it would be a nice film, too. And this makes me a bit crazy. It doesn't deal anymore with what I'm after. When I do this film on Le Corbusier, it's more that I know how to do it, but it's not something that
Portrays your enthusiasm, libido, wherever.
Yes, I think I've reached the point where I should stop that. So this is not chronological. We're starting in the present.
Right, but it would be convenient to set something chronological.
I think about growing up in the early 50s. The house of my parents was full of people from the East. My parents, my sister, and me, we all lived in one room.
So it was in one room.
Yes, one room, and then we had a kitchen. In the other rooms lived my grandparents and their sons, and upstairs were the refugees from the East.
East, you mean?
East Germany. They had fled from the Russians. The loo was outside in the courtyard. They had to go through our living rooms to get there. I often have dreams about rooms full of people. I don't remember anything nice about my family life. I always thought, this can't be real. There must be something else. I wanted to go away.
And do you think the fact that your parents' house was full of people was the reason for you wishing to go away?
When I was 14, I wrote to Australian and Canadian immigration organizations and got all their papers. Later, I wanted to go to the United States, and I took the first possibility to do that. I screened a film at the Hamburger Film Show, which was a local showcase since the 60s. An American filmmaker, Larry Gottheim, had a film there in 1973. My film was called Schenectady. I had found heavily retouched postcards in the streets of Hamburg, and they reflected my idea of nature, that it is fully retouched. On the postcard it read, "A scene near Schenectady, New York." I didn't know what Schenectady meant. It's a town in upstate New York, and it's an Indian phrase for beautiful view. Larry went to see my film because of its title. Schenectady was not far from his hometown. He liked the film and said, "Why don't you come to the States?" So I went, and then I just stayed.
In the 70s.
It was 74 when I first went there. This somehow saved my life because I couldn't stand Germany. I had the feeling there is something wrong there. Something is missing. I didn't take it for real. The surrounding was surreal to me.
Where was your house in Germany?
In a small town near Bremen. I wanted to be a cartoonist at the newspaper and applied for an apprenticeship to become a draftsman. With other applicants, I had a kind of examination. They placed a beer bottle in front of us and asked us to draw it. My drawing must have been nice with shading and everything, so they decided I should become a photo retoucher and not a cartoonist. For 3 years, I worked in that publishing house. It had been a good time for me because I didn't like to go to school. I especially couldn't stand the gym teachers, many of whom had been teaching German history and literature under the Third Reich and were downgraded into gym teachers after the war. This was even worse because they made remarks about your body, and you can't stand that when you're young.
I want to interrupt here. You once told me that you were playing among ruins when you were a kid, and this was before getting 8 years old.
The German fleet was stationed in Wilhelmshaven, and they stored their oil down the river Weser in underground bunkers. They brought the oil on little ships to Wilhelmshaven. One of these bunker systems was near our hometown. A strange landscape because the bunkers were overgrown with trees to hide them.
Fake trees?
Real forests. The British bombarded the system, and then there were people living in the ruins. Every now and then, we went to Bremen to buy something to wear. You rode through the outskirts and walked through a lot of ruins and empty lots. And then everything was built up very fast. Lately, I thought, how strange is that? As a kid, you take it totally for granted that there are ruins and everything is destroyed. In a way, we were the first generation who experienced that a whole city can be rebuilt within a lifetime. Nothing natural about that.
What you describe is important. The ruins, the faking. This bizarre landscape probably engraved something in your personal psyche.
Very nice light outside. Is somebody working there?
The gardener probably cuts off the tree branches today.
I liked going to school in the first years. I had a young teacher, especially his arts program was good, about cubism, the design of the Coca-Cola bottle, and Ronchamp by Le Corbusier, for example. I did paintings and we did exhibitions.
So actually this developed your inclination towards art.
Yes. One sister of my mother was living alone near Hamburg. She was very poor and the black sheep of the family. Once when she visited my mother, she gave me 2 colors to paint with. It was dark blue and ochre. She only had money for 2 tubes.
Oil color.
Yes, so I had a period where I always painted blue and ochre. And then, of course, I was the new black sheep of the family. I never had any money. My parents died before I got my first steady job. After I had finished my apprenticeship, I went back to high school. That was in Hamburg. And then with 2 friends from that school, I started filmmaking.
Actually so young.
When I was 18. One of them was very interested in technique, and he always had a way to get a camera. So we did a film together, and after that, I continued doing films alone. I had a very good philosophy and English teacher in Hamburg, and I became involved in theory, Hegel and Marx, and I decided not to become an artist. I wanted to study and do my doctor's thesis on Adorno. But then around 72, I had a total breakdown at the university.
What age were you?
I was 22. I studied for a while, but I didn't like university. After that breakdown, I started filmmaking again. I was very much into the construction of time systems and how time is represented in film. I analyzed certain time structures that can only be analyzed on film. Very abstract, but for me, it was a kind of basic work. I couldn't stand narrative movies. They didn't make sense to me. I had seen a lot of films when I was young, but when I was 14, this system of narrative plots fell apart for me. I looked at one shot and didn't believe anymore that it meant anything. This whole system that you're supposed to believe that there's a meaning in a certain sequence of shots, I didn't.
You didn't buy it?
I almost became cynical about it. When I started filmmaking, I felt a big gap between me and the so-called new German film. I really didn't like most of their films. Me and my friends were the so-called underground or experimental filmmakers, and they were the narratives. They were from Munich, and we came from Hamburg. There was a big gap between both groups. Only later, when I had finished my pixelation films with their time analysis, I started to use actors. That was in '77. My work was already kind of known then, and I could have gone on forever with it because it's a way of doing films that can produce a beautiful result.
Before we continue, I want to focus on the breakdown that you said you had. What was the nature of it?
I had problems dealing with people. I wanted to work on this feeling of being displaced and not being able to relate to people, on being catatonic. I planned to do a film called Normalsatz. I started to write down whatever came to my ear.
Free association.
No, what I heard and found strange. I started in the '60s with collecting sentences. I have hundreds of notebooks full of them. By the way, last year I made a film in Tbilisi in Georgia with the musical group Kreitler. I documented their recording of a new CD. I had about 26 notebooks ready that I called the alphabet, and I made transcripts of them because I wanted to use parts of their texts as voiceover. But then I read the texts and thought, this is totally useless. I cannot use this material. It tells me nothing anymore. And this is why I stopped the writing altogether. The film, too, is not finished. It's there, 90 minutes long, a visually beautiful film, but I don't know what to do with it.
So you stopped. And in Berlin, I actually saw the last one.
Yes. In the middle of writing that one, I stopped. But in those days, now we're talking about '77, I already had a lot of them, and I had this idea that I'm not really creating language, but that I'm a medium for language that goes through me, and then I would write it down, and something would develop from there. I called the film Normalsatz. It's a word game. The literal translation is ordinary sentence, but it can mean a set of tools, too. I took the notebooks as a basis, did a transcript, and then I worked with the sentences for the film. I had an actor walking through Brooklyn and New York City who got my text through earphones, and then he spoke them during his walk. A long, epic stroll. And I created scenes that I found strange, and I didn't know what they meant. I said, I will collect these scenes and make something out of it. When there is no money anymore, the collection ends. Then I would go into the editing room and find the story. This was the idea, not to start with the story, but to analyze.
Find out what your unconscious actually is saying.
The finished film premiered at the Berlin Film Festival in 1982 and made a kind of buzz at the festival. Frida Graffa praised the film. She's dead now. She was one of the reasons I came back from the States. I thought, if such a noble person is living there, you can go back. I had had a kind of entourage in the experimental film scene, but Normalsatz finished that off. Nobody knew what it was. Is it a documentary film? No. Is it a feature film? No. Is it an experimental film abstract-wise? No. It was exactly something that I didn't know what it was. It fit into no genre. So the people who liked my old films didn't like it, and the narrative movie lovers thought it's a bad film because they could not see a story. There were always these breakdowns. When something was worked out and successful, I threw it away and did something new. Last year, I wanted to go back to storytelling. I had written some scripts. But when I asked myself, do you really want to do this film, I said, no, it's not worth spending a year on it. About Every story I came up with, I thought it's not worth that effort. Stories don't age well. For example, when you saw a film some years ago that you found interesting and you see it again today, you say, this is bullshit. I don't want to spend my time on such a thing. This is the process I'm in now. I want to develop a new kind of narrative. Will it be a story? I don't know.
Okay, let's go back. The kind of breakdown, can you tell me a bit more about it?
Which one?
The first breakdown in Hamburg when you were 22.
It was in the winter. I took my Super 8 camera and went to the Lüneburger Heide. It's a kind of ancient landscape in North Germany. It was snowing and white all over, and I was in a terrible mood. I vomited on the bus, went into the landscape, and got lost. I filmed, broke down, and cried. Since then, I hate the color white in films. I found my way back and decided to drop my university studies and do films. I didn't finish the film I shot there because it was naive. I decided I have to write a score for single frames instead and start from scratch. I still don't believe in the beauty of landscapes. I never liked Caspar David Friedrich. My first film is called Hommage à Caspar David Friedrich. I did it with two friends at that school, and we destroyed every romantic notion that would be possible in nature.
We thought this kind of a landscape idea is totally fake, and
Again, fake. The issue of fake.
I had worked as a retoucher, and I knew how imagery is worked on in the public. I didn't believe in the whole system of representation and images as being proof of something. I didn't believe in that at all.
So fake actually is a kind of leitmotif in your artistic development.
fake and disbelief and not taking something for granted. But sometimes I envy people who think when they tell a story that they actually can tell us something.
You mean you envy people that tell a story and believe it?
Yes, sometimes I envy them, but I couldn't do it. Of course, there are wonderful films. From the beginning, one of my favorite filmmakers was Joseph von Sternberg. It always had to do with the camera work. I also admired Robert Burks, who was the cameraman of Alfred Hitchcock in the 50s. But when I started filmmaking myself, I had never thought they aimed to do films like that. I thought I was doing something completely else. My film, The Holy Bunch, for example, is very much based on a certain cinematography. I went broke with that film, and I had a year-long depression afterwards. I thought I will never do a film again. This was before all the architecture films. Another breakdown.
Because it was a financial, existential break.
And then this strange thing happened. I was invited to a German series in Cannes where The Holy Bunch was screened. And a commercial film director saw me there. He was going to do a war movie on Stalingrad and was looking for actors. He saw me and asked me whether I would act in his film, and I said, why not? But I thought, well, just Can Bartok. But after half a year, he called me, and I got the role. I made a lot of money and could repay my debts with that war film.
This was your savior from a very difficult...
That director used me in another film where I had a role as a blind person. They put white contact lenses in my eyes, and I couldn't see anything. In the Stalingrad movie, they had cut off one of my legs, and I thought, this guy wants to castrate me all the time, so I didn't work with him again.
We will make a short break here. Would you like to have a cup of tea or coffee?
No.
Water?
Yes. Thank you, a glass of water. I'm afraid I always talk about the same stories.
We will try to find cracks in them when we continue. Sometimes by a different set of retelling this.
We talk about these breakdowns and how they always became breakthroughs. But how do we know there is a resolution to this? Maybe there is none. I never felt like this before. I really do want to continue filmmaking. I always wanted to frame something, even as a kid. I didn't have a camera, but I looked through things to frame the outside world and make a decision about it. And that's what I like most in filmmaking. That is something very intimate that I need to do, because then I have the feeling that my brain is really there in the outside world and not just inside. But to say now that these breakdowns are necessary is already like a way of making sense in a situation where you can't make order anymore. Sometimes the way you tell things is already making so much sense and putting you in a kind of relief for a short while, and then it falls apart again.
I think from early childhood on, you are trying to extract a meaning from a very bizarre and artificial and unreal situation. Sometimes you experience the melting of the very fabric of reality. And this is why you are looking for a new thing.
When we filmed The Holy Bunch, I had made the decision not to write a final script, but to decide early each morning what we will film on the prepared sets, but not before. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and would write down what we would film. Parts of the team thought this was heavily unprofessional. One can't do that. One has to have...
Proper script and a shooting plan and everything else, right?
Sure.
And you didn't want to do that.
No.
Exactly. There is something inside you that you want to go against. It's not just a rebellion of a youngster against the conventions. It's this very thing that you have your quest to decipher what is real and what is meaningful.
The task is to keep up the most energy for that moment of thinking and being alive and being on the set with your brain. I feel that when I do the camera. That's the moment when I feel that I'm 100% present. And I don't feel that when I just fulfill a script or something. I still want to work that way, that I set the rule. Either I'm 100% there or I don't do it. But it's painful to find out the story that lies behind it all. You have to bear that it's something else than what you intended to do.
And you have this allowance in yourself.
Yes, but when I finish the film, it's completely over. By the way, all these films created a kind of uproar. People said, even when I began with the architecture films, this is not a film, this is something else. They didn't tell me what a film is, but that was always their argument. This is not a real film. I thought, well, it might be the case, but I can't do anything else, and I feel good about it. I had fights with other filmmakers who said, your films are too complicated and have no story. But I was not interested in that. I was interested in the complications.
Yes.
Filmmaking definitely saved my life. I was so totally alienated from real time that I had to go this way and analyze time systems. Every film turned out to be a contact ad. How we met, too, is that you read something in the newspaper about it. You cannot predict this.
Exactly.
All my friends now I met through the films. When you film something and you're open and you project an idea into space, people can read it.
This is actually Jung's basic theory of synchronicity. He didn't believe in cause and effect, but he said that we as psychics are creating, but also are connecting to some kind of cosmic waves and things of similar resonance. This is why sometimes when you think of someone and all of a sudden meet him in the street.
That sounds already like quantum theory. And it's the theme of The Demon of Analogy, a poem by Stéphane Mallarmé. I made a film about that.
Synchronicity?
Yes. Demon brought me back into contact with a real time and live action. I stepped back into society. The official reaction to this film was against it, like, what is it good for? Well, I wanted to keep a space open that wasn't invaded by filmic forms already. But why is that? I remember when I was young, I always had a disbelief in language, and I couldn't really talk. I always thought film is so good because you need not be present at the screenings. Eventually, I made myself stay by producing slideshows that I had to project myself because nobody else could do it. It made me stay in contact with the audience.
It was very important that you did it to yourself. But emotionally, I think something was absent in the sense that you have difficulties to accept the positive aspects of your creation, as if you're keeping some kind of alienation towards it after it's done.
I have the definite sensation that it's over when it's done, as if there is a law that it would be a repetition and you should never repeat yourself. When I watch my films, I look at them as if somebody else did them.
You see, this kind of alienation prevents you from another aspect of your creation.
And what would that be?
a different level of being connected with the emotional material that is surrounding it, created by the interaction with the audience witnessing your product. This is something that you sort of cut from your experience. Sometimes it has to do with praising you, and there is a reluctance in you to accept that. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say to you?
Yes, because I really can't enjoy it. For example, when I got the prize at the Berlinale this year, I was standing beside myself. And then I went immediately after to the hospital because I couldn't urinate anymore.
Or more burning issues?
But it's true. It doesn't really reach me. I don't believe it.
What you do not believe?
The praise.
Why? Because it's positive? If they would say negative things, you would pay more attention to that than to the praising?
I started to defend my films, but I knew that I couldn't do other films.
Yes, and you shouldn't. They want what they are used to.
The publisher I had later, the German critic and writer Uwe Nettelbeck, saw for years that I did new films and got the same shabby response. But I continued doing them, and at one point he said, "You just face them out." And I considered that being the best compliment that anybody ever made about my work.
And you were pleased.
I thought that there is something in the films that might speak later. As a youngster, when I was shy and couldn't talk, I always thought language is not enough. A lot of what has to be communicated can't be communicated through language. That's why I started images, because I thought this is the way to communicate on a more complicated, non-linear level of communication. But I think that your life on a very basic level can be so shaken that you don't believe
That
in
you're
it.
making a difference.
Yes. When you say that I can't enjoy the positive aspects of my work, I would answer because it doesn't last. I've become my own consumer, and I like watching the films as if I didn't make them myself. Sometimes I even wake up in horror that I have to do them all again because I didn't do them yet.
Why did this alienation actually enter as a knife into continuity?
It's a normal aspect of photography that you depict something that is outside of yourself. You did exactly this picture in exactly this time span, and you do a collage with other pieces of time and pictures. But it's always something already existing outside of you. What you add to it are all the decisions that come to that point and get into this product. It might be a bit hidden. When I look at the images and still like them and feel something is going on, why isn't that enough?
This specific aspect that I insist on is missing. The fact that you need to embrace it to yourself as part of you and not as disconnected and alien to you. This continuity is something important. Try to imagine the analogy that all these things that you created are your children. I think this metaphor can portray what I'm talking about.
Well, then I must be a very bad father.
That's what I'm saying. Nevertheless, you did create those things, and the relationship between the things you created is worth examining.
Recently, a German TV station celebrated 1 week long its 30 years of programming their highlights. They screened 3 of my long films in that week. And at the same time, my producer got a letter from them saying that they will never produce a film of mine again because they do not fit into their program. That is the political reality. They praise you in public, and at the same time, they tell you in private your work is shit. It doesn't matter much, but on the other hand, it is a strange thing.
It is. One thing that came to my mind when I saw the Holy Bunch is that it featured an amazing dialogue between the pieces of the ongoing plot with the different landscapes and architectures that you choose. And the other is the distinction between every character in it. Everyone portrays some kind of a world.
I think all these different protagonists in that film are one brain doing this. A dialogue doesn't take place. It's a very monological film. And that film is the basis of my architecture films. I just dropped the actors later.
I understood it the minute I saw it because it incorporates architecture as another meaning and language within the film. It's not just a background.
No. It's a protagonist.
Another protagonist, exactly.
It was very hard for me to push that through in cinematography. Usually you have something like a foreground and a background. The foreground is always the actor in focus, and the background is somehow... I didn't want that. The aim of the film was to connect the human head with architecture on the picture plane. The head is so small and architecture is so large. How can you actually relate that? I always thought the main reason of my films is the cinematography and not
The plot.
Well, I think the meaning of it derives from the cinematography.
Yes, it's the language that accompanies the whole film.
I don't really get what you said about the positive aspects. How can anything last in your consciousness as something positive? It's wiped out again by something else.
If you have this kind of mechanism, continuity could prevail with a different kind of emotional existence. Remember my analogy to children, the fact that you had an important experience with this child.
It's finished, it has a form, it has an end, and it shouldn't be different. The work is done.
Yes, this work is over. Then a new experience is waiting for you, and this has something to do with you interacting with the audience.
Something is speaking against that. I very early on made the decision that only the act of creating itself is important. And this is actually why I now stopped writing the notebooks. They always kept me in the illusion I was doing something. It was an experiment that went nowhere. I am still thinking about what you call alienation, because I still can't see the alternative. What would it actually mean when you care more for something that you once did? How could I do that?
We will see.
I'm a bit afraid whether I will have the energy for the filming that starts next week in Israel. There are 11 days of filming.
And you're the cinematographer as well?
Yes, that's why I do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do a film. I'm very well aware of the fact that the change I'm going through now is very deep and very different than the other ones. Different because there is not the illusion of endless time anymore. That's why I said these feature film projects aren't worth the energy and time I would have to spend on them.
Right, but you told me that you're thinking of doing feature films.
I am now thinking more about dialogue. I'm not interested in a sociological story. It's about remembrance and about how people became what they are.
Sounds good to me.
Of course, an analytical process is involved in that. Otherwise, why should people talk? It took me a long time to come to this conclusion.
Still, you have to write the dialogue, which is a huge undertaking.
Yes, it has to deal with certain evasions, blocks, or problems that come up.
Two things actually in this section now were very distinct. Your references to fake, which in turn influences a feeling of alienation.
When I was young or a child, it was the whole society, not only pictures that were fake.
It's in Germany post-war.
There was this silence in my family. Nobody talked, but you felt everything that had gone on. As a kid, I was afraid that we children would be gassed in the gym showers at school. Even today, with more and more information, I understand less and less why something terrible like that could happen. The impact of it is not getting weaker.
On the contrary,
It's a mystery for me how people could have survived the war and how they built up everything again and live with it.
it's very interesting that you took this fake aspect into language as well in disbelieving the ability of language to convey the truth. At the same time, you're very particular about language.
If I would tell the story of that construction, I would have to write a linear essay from one sentence to the next and describe it. But when you look at it, it's there immediately. This aspect of simultaneity, which is a theme of modern literature too, was always very dominant in my work. When you grow up in a certain surrounding which you don't really believe in, you develop different fantasies or concepts of time. First, you have to find out where you are. You are in Germany in the 50s, and it suddenly grows on you where you are and what kind of language you speak, and that there is an outside world. So you want to be somewhere else.
Right.
Of course, this is different now. We know where we are. We know a bit about our surroundings. We have a more transparent vision of societies and what they can do and what they can't do, and what they are able to do when they're on the wrong track. It's from the beginning a more analytical approach to the visual. When you say these films are my children, I must say they are products. They are in the world. I want them to have a life of their own, and I don't want to really care for them. If somebody else cares for them, I will give them the rights.
Good.
We were talking about dialogue and what kind of dialogue could be in a narration. Evasions, repetitions, lying, or whatever.
Will you leave for the audience to decide whether evasion or lying is happening, or do you highlight it?
No. But the dialogue goes on and comes back to a certain issue. And suddenly there is a different version of it.
And you know what they're talking about?
They may talk about things that makes the audience question, what are they actually talking about?
But you have the framework.
Yes. Last year I sat down and wrote something about streets. And streets, of course, are everywhere on Earth and the most vague possible subject. You can do whatever you want with it when you start filming. It's just never concrete enough that somebody could nail you down on it. And then I thought, now I can do what I want, but what will I do? I had doubts about the project. I told my producer about it, and he liked the idea. It's very good to have people with whom you can share doubts about projects. And they don't say, leave my office, you're stealing my time, or something.
Sure.
A lot of my friends and people who cared for my films died in the AIDS crisis. Suddenly, a whole culture was wiped out. That was at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. I had to start all over again. It was amazing that there is no continuity.
What do you think when I say that stream of consciousness is the kind of general ideal you're looking for?
Am I really? It was actually my idea for a long time that stream of consciousness is something true and really happening. It deals with your mind being present in life. But now I'm not so fond about it anymore. I want to control more what I do. It can be totally open, but I want to have a new method of channeling an outcome, putting another process into focus, and that deals with language again. Most of the architecture films didn't care for spoken words, but now there should be a new trust in them. This is something else than stream of consciousness. I wanted to say something, but I forgot. It'll come back to me. When you go on and on for a long time and someone says, well, now you faced all your critics out because you just continue doing something, you get tired of that.
Fighting them in a way, right?
There's no alternative to that. But at one point, you don't really communicate with them. It's more like a statement, what you do. You say, I don't give you dialogue. I don't give you voiceover. Look at it yourself and make something out of it. I think it's right like this. This is a harsh statement, and maybe you make friends with it, but you make enemies.
As well. And you make more enemies than friends.
Yes. And you can't keep it up all the time. You're the only one who keeps it up. It's an amazing stress. And then you don't believe people who say they like it. It's a vicious circle.
Yes, it is.
Even now, talking about the new project, I'm afraid of being too positive about it. Although I like that I found something that is really valid to pursue, I'm still afraid that I'm too enthusiastic about it.
So you fight it?
Do I fight it? I don't know.
No, I'm asking, do you fight it?
I'm looking for reasons against it.
In terms of your emotions, it gives you a kind of enthusiasm. What is your great fear in evading the positive? That you will get disappointed?
My fear is that it's not really worth something, or that it doesn't really mean something to me, because I think that it doesn't last. That has nothing to do with people. I like when they approach me, but it's not that the fact that it could mean something for other people would save me. I feel it's totally unsafe ground and open to interpretation. And it's nothing that you can take home. The 2 days of shooting the Corbusier film were very interesting last month. I had a good time making one decision after the other, and at the end of the day, I was tired and went to sleep, and that was a wonderful day. I'm a bit addicted to this kind of existence. I had years in which I filmed 150 days.
That's a lot.
Yes, I think those were the best years. Of course, this is an evasion too, because you run away from something.
You feel that diving into work is a kind of evasiveness?
Yes.
But this is the real thing, so what are you evading?
I like it, but I don't like the other time.
The time that comes after it. You are thoughtful?
Yes, I'm thinking about what we did until now and what we talked about. I still believe we have to go somewhere else to find out about something. Up to now, I told everything very fluently. It's not that this is normal to me that I talk about it, but I might have dealt already with the story for myself and found a certain language to deal with it.
Yes.
And since I know that this is not enough, because I can't deal with it by myself, I'm just curious. How will we continue? How will we reach?
Other districts. It's an important issue, what you just said. But before reaching other districts in which you might not be fluent or that might be a challenge for your comfort zone, first of all, we need some more time. Your unconscious apparatus needs to feel safer, and that takes some time. What is conscious and should be deliberate is for you to be daring, because I don't know what you don't tell me.
Did I tell you that I don't have nightmares anymore?
Do you remember the nature of them?
Unsolvable situations that would lead to death, war, or death penalty. I woke up and was in the trenches of the First World War, and for a long time I had dreams about being decapitated. It even turned into a wish not to have a head anymore and to be unconscious.
You have been very creative in this.
What? I don't know. Well, I guess so, but now I really enjoy dreaming and sleeping, and I'm looking forward to it as if it's my profession and my work to do that. I never want to go back where I came from, to my hometown.
Even up today.
I have no desire to go there. I have the same feeling with Berlin. I don't need a special place to be anymore.
Interesting. Anywhere.
At the moment, yes. Also, I was never really attached to Berlin, and when I'm here now or when I live in a hotel when we work on a film, I feel just as well there. I think I could do a film in any room and don't have the desire.
To belong.
What do you mean by belong?
Belong to a place that you can call home.
I don't call it home.
See, that's an issue. It's not a simple issue.
Even if I would think now I should go somewhere else, I wouldn't know where to go because I would not be interested in it.
This paradox is something important.
Basically, I like to travel, change circumstances and surroundings, and then function and do something there. I don't know.
Does it signify something to you that you don't need to be attached to a home? Because we can interpret it in two different ways. One is that you have perhaps your own home within you, where you feel safe, or you can interpret it the other way around, that the depth of rootlessness becomes immense.
I think it's more the second, that you go somewhere and you look through it without curiosity. But I feel differently when I'm somewhere and I work with a camera. That really becomes me, and that's why I like it. You see, a lot of this talk about Heimat and home is to know how to deal with electricity, water, and to know how to deal with all the aspects of daily life. It seems to be only a kind of laziness not to care for these things in other places than the places you're used to. And this is then called home, because you have the facilities. I always worked out of my places. I like to have my books and pictures, but I lost interest in that too.
Almost like in Freud's concept of unheimlich.
What's that?
Unheimlich, the fact that the place where we feel at home and safe becomes the opposite. Instead of giving peace and serenity, it becomes something that has menace in it and is frightening. In a way, you don't describe it as that threatening. It's more as a gradual change. We talked about Malta in January, and you were full of learning.
Yes, and I was for years. It changed. I can't talk myself into it and say, isn't it wonderful that you can go there? It is a great place to write. I always like to go there, but I don't have the attachment anymore that I had before. I can't make it come back.
Yes, it's a process which indicates that you can put your hands and hold on something, and this diminishes the moment you accomplish it, a kind of repetitive compulsion. You strive to correct the incomplete object, but the moment it becomes favorable, round.
I have the feeling that it's finished, it's fulfilled. a film or even an apartment, I lose interest because it's worked out. And you say it's not worked out at all because I repeat that all the time. But in a way, for me, it is worked out.
In your film, The Holy Bunch, there was a scene where he wants her to tear off one of the drawings. And after she did it quite thoroughly, he said, it's not the right one. And he said with no imminent sorrow. It comes to me as an association to what we are talking about.
My family didn't like that I did drawings. Not like now when every little piece of drawing of a child is hanging at a wall. My mother didn't like me to read books, too.
Really?
Books were from the devil. She had this thing that intellectuals are devils. I think it had to do with Nazi Germany, because the young Nazis were all intellectuals.
They were not. They were?
Look at the young Nazis like Heydrich, Kaltenbrunner, terrible intellectuals.
They were evil, false intellectuals.
Yes, they were what people thought intellectuals are. My mother had this deepest...
Contempt.
Not contempt. It was more like suspicion. In that scene, I made fun of myself of being a painter sitting in an easel doing drawings. I actually never do them like that. They are small, I do them on my desk. I wanted to have her, Carola in the film, being rude about it, just like, well, he said I should destroy it, so I did it.
Is she in her role some kind of librarian?
She's collecting Freudian slips.
Very interesting. I want to say something about what you just said about your mother. Let's suppose that you internalize that she was suspicious towards an intellectual approach on the one hand, and was suspicious or disrespectful about your artistic products on the other. And while in one way you are fighting against her attitude because you became an intellectual and you became an artist, she engraved in you the two forces that are still influencing you. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. So you say I internalized what she wanted or not wanted of me. I would not say my parents didn't love me. It was more they were speechless about
How you are.
Yes. She didn't like that I split from my job and went back to school. But what could they do? They had to respect it.
One thing you oblige her suspicious about intellectuals is that you never graduated from anywhere. You quit before that. Do you think it has a relationship with this?
Why? I don't mind that I didn't do that.
Well, I'm referring to that you might have unconsciously obliged her suspicion towards studies.
That's right. University was a joke for me. I didn't respect it. I couldn't stand the politics and these stupid things that happened in Germany in the beginning of the 70s. Friends of mine became terrorists. Some of them were from bourgeois families. They rebelled against their parents because they were Nazis. Then suddenly they were in a Palestinian fighters camp to go into the terrorist work. It was totally bizarre. When I decided to go to the United States, I was called a fascist by my German friends because of the Vietnam War. I stopped my university studies in 1972. I wanted to do films. I never thought it would turn into a profession. It was a decision to work in a certain way with time. You can do it philosophically, you can write about it, or you can think about it, but in film you can actually do something with time, which is a totally different thing. There is one moment in my life that I just recalled. One of my nephews told me the story. He was still a young boy, and it was 1985, and my film Die Basis des Make-up was shown on TV. The TV station hated that film. They said it was the worst film they had ever produced, and they would never do another film with me again, and they didn't. But my father was very proud that a film of his son was shown on TV, and he invited all the neighbors to see what his son had done. And then this film was so disturbing to them that they didn't even mention it to me anymore.
A shame on the family.
My nephew was 13 when it happened. He witnessed the whole scene, and now he is amused by it. But it was this kind of incident where your father is proud of something he does not even know. He just thought that the fact that something is on TV means that
you are important. And then it was a fiasco for him.
Imagine what else happened. There is this German magazine, Der Spiegel, and in the same week, they wrote 5 pages about my film. I called the TV station that had produced the film and said, there is an article about it, and they said, we don't read Der Spiegel here. For me now, of course, it's funny, but...
Well, now it's funny, but then you were in the middle of the storm. And by the way, it's not by mistake that you're telling me these 2 stories. Your father, who is proud and then realized that it's something that he shouldn't mention, and the TV that actually presented it, but then doesn't want to deal with you anymore, while at the same time for Der Spiegel to write 5 pages, this is an enormous success.
Yes, but not in my world, you know. It didn't mean something to these people.
And therefore not to you.
And on the other hand, there was this society that was totally closed, and I don't know how people got through the 50s.
And at the same time, the landscape around you was distraction, fake, unreal or surreal.
I often broke my arm when I was a kid. The hospital was a little outside of our town, and we didn't have a car. My father had a bicycle, and at one point, when I broke my arm, he had to bring me to the hospital. I was sitting on the bike with him, and because of the jumping, it was extremely painful. But I still have the feeling that he cared for me.
On a bicycle with a broken arm, it's very painful, any fracture.
I was a lot of times in hospitals when I was young. At one point for 8 weeks. In those days, there were big rooms with a lot of people in it. Children and old men all together in one room. There was a man in the bed next to me, and they cut off his toe. A week later, they cut off part of his foot. They cut off the foot. They cut off the leg under the knee, and they cut off higher because there was something with his wounds. I always had to discuss with him where to cut it off next.
That is so surreal.
And then, when it was up to here after a few weeks, he disappeared into the room where you die. There was a nurse who did the x-rays, and my arm was in a cast and had to be x-rayed. I would go into the dark room and develop the x-rays with her. I was totally amazed by the fact that you slowly see something. It was especially exciting when my own bones were x-rayed to answer the question whether the operation had been successful.
It seems you have a subject for your dialogue project.
And what's that?
Conversation about life and death, the absurdity of both.
My mother wanted me to work at a post office as a state employee. My father was working at a post office, my sister was working there, and she wanted me to go to a post office too. That was her
dream.
Her dream, and then her big disappointment when I said I don't want to work at the post office. That broke her heart, you know. What can you do?
Yes, of course, but then you have to deal with the explicit and the hidden disappointment of her. You have to deal with it, fight it, and say, okay, you want what you want, but I want something else. It's a rapid way to create an individuation of yours, but it has a price, and the price is to deal with emotionally and consciously her disappointment and to carry it on.
It's 4 o'clock already. Do you think we accomplished something?
So how are you?
Not so well. I feel a bit like a hopeless case. I thought about what we talked about on Sunday. I never had what other people had with their parents, fights.
Don't be mistaken. You have your own fight, a different one. Not like your friends who were criticizing their parents because they were Nazis. You have a different fight, and it was not an easy fight. It was a great defiance to what your home was for you, a fight that gave you much more freedom than you even expected, because you knew that you can't rely on anyone except yourself, that you are responsible for your own mistakes as well as you are responsible for your own gains. One of the things that was very strong is forcing you to get all the times out of prison. Prison of frameworks, prison of school, prison of university, prison of what people expected you within the framework of filming. You were thinking all the time out of the box to define yourself as undefined. And you took the wrong turn in the sense that instead of having this kind of joy, you sort of identified with the old voices inside. There is no need to.
That's hard for me to believe. in retrospect. I heavily forget that I gained something. I always feel that the fight continues in the present.
It does. There is always a kind of fight, but it should not necessarily be that strong that it's absorbing your energy. To make it not that strong is to allow some positive aspects of yourself to come into the scene.
On Sunday, we talked about that the time I really feel alive is looking through a camera and projecting some gazes, recording them, and then looking at the result and feeling that my brain has been there.
Yes.
I told you that I feel good when I do it, even if I'm exhausted. But isn't that, again, a kind of evasion away from the problem? It's as if I'm always running away into this kind of situation, one film after the other. When there is no film, there's a deep gap, and this thing comes and gets me.
It's an important point I want to reflect. The fact that the camera was an escape, and the fact that the way that you took is becoming not only an escape, but a way of expressing art. It's true that in this very junction of your life, you're looking for something different. You want to do a film not as an evasion.
Yes.
Whenever there is creation, you can't say it's just an evasion because of the energy inside.
But then it was the end of something, and I would have felt like a machine if I would have gone on like that, like something that I know how to do, and I would feel like a robot.
This is why there is this junction, a very important one in your emotional life.
Creation, when you talk about it, it sounds so great, but it's really painful. It was always painful because you cannot be sure. If you start to feel sure,
It's a problem.
and now it's already almost a year that this strange state started. I had the desire to draw, and I found every excuse not to. I wanted to finish the Tbilisi film, and I didn't. Actually, I don't really get when you say you have to be positive. I don't get that because you can't make the decision to be positive
No, of course not.
if you don't feel it.
Exactly. I'm not saying it in a kind of slogan of that stupid positive psychology. What I'm saying is that in this situation you are in now, at the same time you embrace your unfortunate aspects in you, it's high time that you also look at the positive aspects in you and accept them. Just that. Not turning into a walking positive zombie. And I'm saying that it's high time because you are blinding one part of the spectrum and look only at the dark side of it.
Streak seems to me very robot-like too. It's like a mechanism.
Which you don't need anymore in that fashion. There's another thing I want to say. I think you were sort of forecasting when you said a year ago I finished a trilogy and this is the end of this genre.
I said it in public, published it and everything, although I continue.
Of course, you have one thing remaining from this, which is the Tbilisi film. Finish it when you find the energy.
I keep it open for a new kind of narrative.
So you don't put it in the same fashion as the previous films.
It's waiting there for me to arrive.
And this is important because when you finish the Holy Bunch, you realize that you might as well remove the protagonist and use the so-called background as a protagonist. The fact that you allow the architecture to have its own voices is very unique.
It was a conscious decision. That film actually is the end of those films that work with that kind of stream of consciousness, using and quoting language all the time, but not having a dialogue. For me, it was a statement about the nature of the narrative. I was not interested in realistic acting. For me, it was an encyclopedia of acting, like theater acting, film acting, and performance. Every kind of acting is in there. So it's still the analytical approach in regard to language. After that, I wanted to do one single film called Photography and Beyond. And with beyond, I meant the space in which we read images in our brain, not heaven or something. You have to read the images so that they stick in there. I thought I could do that in one film, but it took me 7 years to come out with a product. During the whole time, I filmed and filmed Layard and Sullivan, but I got an editing block. I looked at my material that came out of the camera, and I liked it. I didn't feel any necessity to dramatize it with voiceover or with music. It took me 7 years to come to this simple form of architecture films with their chronological order. I thought this is so simple, there must be thousands of films like this, but there were none.
Nobody did it like this. When I first saw it in Hi-Fi, I was amazed. And all this reflects a very vibrant inner dialogue about you and the medium and your specific quest to find something. It's not a null, it's something of great value. One can see the energy which is alive and kicking and definitely not something depressive.
The Loos film was done in the same method as the Gough film and the Schindler film, which are American architects who work very experimentally. When I see those films, I see the very depressive elements in the Loos film because of his fate. And the others were in the States and were able to develop a free style of architecture. It's very interesting for me that my methodology set free to experience that the architecture itself takes over and expresses its moods and its time-based existence. But this is the past.
But every period of yours reached some kind of conclusion which was the basis or the forming stones of another. This is your architecture.
It would be nice if I could believe in that.
But why don't you? Let's examine this one. Why don't you? Because from the outside, it's so obvious that this was your journey.
I don't feel safe at all. It's existentially totally disturbing, this phase I'm in.
Okay, this we can accept, but the evolving phase is not necessarily something that must convey to you the end of things. It doesn't have form yet, and it's not the first time.
And this is so normal that it's almost banal. But what is this destructive energy that holds back so much?
You have the choice to send it to the background and say, I deeply, emotionally understand this was the situation, and this is how I responded to the situation. It has a certain impact. There were certain junctions in the road, but there were a lot of things that were your choices and your development and your evolution.
At one point in the beginning of the 80s, I got an offer to stay in the US and become a cameraman for big productions. I preferred not to, because in those days the film world was heavily departmentalized. And when you started out as a cameraman, you would never be able to become a director. I always wanted to do my own films, so I said no and decided to raise money for my own films. I think about my life and ask myself, what could I have done differently? Nothing.
You couldn't, because even this choice is an escape for freedom. All the time you had a vibrant dialogue to get out from prison, either a real one, fixating one, or conceptualizing one. It's so obvious you cannot see it. Perhaps you feel in prison now because of your medical situation and age, and you need to escape from it because you are not that limited as you perceive. You just gave another example, escaping from being fixated in the States as a cameraman. There was an inner urge in you, perhaps you didn't conceptualize it this way. The moment you felt you're about to be in prison, you fled.
But am I not free now? In conventional terms, I'm free. I can do what I want. I can travel to wherever I want. The problem is that I don't feel free to do what I want, or that I do not even want to do something.
Exactly. Let's find out what kind of prison you're taking upon you now. What kind of image of prison you put yourself in?
I don't know. I don't imagine an architectural space. It's more the space of my brain that I don't want to feel anymore. I wonder what will happen during the filming in Israel. I want to film not only the objects, but a lot of the surroundings and landscapes. It might become a very sad film because the buildings were built for purposes that don't exist anymore, or they're not used anymore for the purposes they were built for. I want to call the film Pickle Socialism because it's one of the examples of how the idea of socialism has run down. It might be very sad, but it is the truth.
Yes, that was a sad story of the kibbutz. Kibbutz was the manifestation of socialism and actually turned into a farce.
I am a little afraid of the social interaction during the shoot. I will hide behind the camera. That is what I usually do. When people want to talk to me, I look through the camera and have no time to talk. It's rude, but when you want to do a film, you have to do that. I hope G does the social stuff.
And you can be free from it.
Yes, but this is an old method. You put a black cloth over your head, look through the lens, and then you're outside of the world, and at the same time being more inside the world than you ever were before. But socially, you isolate yourself.
This is very you.
Yes, but that's how I work.
Of course.
That might be awful. I don't know whether it's good.
You are used to work like that, so it will be the same, but we will try to think differently.
Yes, I do already now because I never had thoughts like that before I started an architecture film. I regret at this point already that my work itself will set me apart from the social interaction. So it might be one of the very last films that I do about isolated
Do I
architecture.
hear from you between the lines a kind of craving for an interaction to happen?
Yes, I think so.
That's very important.
The main question for me now is a question of age, too. How feelings that lasted so long already with these situations, how do I not fall into the same trap? I might feel well for some time and then it's coming back in full force. It's this strange sense of being filled with insecurity and being convinced that you can't do something against it because it's already too old. To find a new force against it in the moment is inconceivable for me. This is my situation. I feel bad about always being in the same spot.
But it's your truth. It's what you have.
Yes, but it's very uncomfortable. And of course, there's something like a guilty feeling because, as you said, I'm totally free. I can do what I want, but I don't do it. And I feel guilty about the banality. I'm sweating. Maybe we should stop today.
You want to stop here?
I don't know what to say.
Can you share with me what you have in mind now?
I was thinking about the very limited language I have to speak about these experiences. I fear that I lose the connection to the problem. I fear that I can't concentrate. I don't want to find the easy way out. You laugh. Well, this is what I'm thinking about. And I'm kind of empty too, which is maybe good.
Will it be possible for you to listen to a recording of today until tomorrow? Especially today's recording.
Yes, I can do that in the morning. So maybe we should stop for today. What do you think?
Yes, it could be. I want to encourage you to think of a few of the topics that we talked about and touch them emotionally. What we need to delve into further is not only understanding, but to get a grasp of your emotional experience of the anticlimax bottom and the fears attached to it. An important issue is coming to terms with situations, accepting that there are certain things now in your life, but the fact that they not necessarily have to draw you down. Health might not be stable and it might not be comfortable, to say the least, but in terms of your psyche, it doesn't need to serve it with agony. In a way, it's the same like the position that you took behind the camera, in a kind of sense status of seeing things but not allow them to change you down. This was your escape all the time.
You mean the camera work? Yes.
I'm suggesting to do the same towards your situation at this junction before you take the road to the
I
next.
really want to do that. But before that, there is always the threshold that I don't believe that I will succeed. There is always this feeling that it's hopeless. I can do what I want. I will not succeed in doing it. I really want that, but there is still something holding me back.
Yes, we might find it or not, but also it's important that we will walk without the fear of not succeeding. So what?
I'm walking what?
I will say it again. Do you need these securities? What I'm saying is, so what? It's time to let go. So you don't have the guarantees which you had before.
Which guarantees?
The guarantee that you will be successful in taking a new path.
I never had a guarantee.
Exactly. So why do you insist this time upon having them now?
It's not a guarantee. It's a feeling of disbelief in my energy.
Were you before all the time fully armed with beliefs that you have all the energies? If you look retrospect at it, no, this was your life.
But why is it so strong this time? With all this knowledge, maybe knowledge isn't enough.
It's the beginning, but we still need to recruit some other resources, not just the knowledge, not the words, not the language, not the formal aspects. It
was interesting to listen to what we did yesterday, and I feel much better. It became so clear that we were always at a certain point when the silence started. Very important in our discussion is the role of the camera as a kind of mediator and a means of evasion, too, even if you work with it and concentrate. The fun of filming is to make decisions and to be very clear about your decisions. I don't doubt what I do when I do the camera. It's an interesting process that the brain is really on the spot, and this is why I might be addicted to do this work. But then we started to talk about the camera being a means of evasion, too. That I hide behind the camera and need something between me and reality. That is a very interesting space because here is your brain, here is the camera, and there is reality. All three elements are shifting. I never believed what some people say in film theory. The camera is the eye. The camera is not the eye. The camera is a camera, and it is sitting away from the eye. You actually look into it and make decisions inside. It's a three-parted system, and not a two-parted system. The camera is not an eye, and the eye is not a camera. In that moment, you called it the Zen moment, when you retreat and make a decision about what you see. In this process of constructing and composing an image, you really believe that what you see is not only the surface, but the content of it. Mm-hmm. There is no gap between the surface and the content. You believe in that moment that this image and the so-called surface is everything you get, and you have to make your composition with that. And that will be the content then. This is different to the usual use of your eyes. When I, for example, come here and look out of the car window, I see images, but I see more. I see society behind it. It's a very different way of seeing than when you work with a camera, because with a camera, you only have the surface. It's a mechanical machine, and something has to come out of the composition that deals with society. But you deal with it on a level that is different than the usual way of seeing. The way of looking in the state of depression, though, means always that you look straight through things and there is nothing left. It's a very different way of perceiving reality when you are in that state. Another thing about this state of depression is that you lose curiosity and you're not interested anymore. This is opposite to the way the camera works, which is always that you have a kind of curiosity on this picture plane. These two ways of seeing, I feel, are very important.
Your thoughts and insights and the fact that you present them as two options of looking at things and two options of feeling are very important. That there is an option is in fact what's important. The kind of experience and age that you are possessing could be a platform for something new and different.
As a young guy, when you start doing something, you have to work as if you already did something. You have the idea there is an area of language that is especially there for you, but you have to fulfill it. I definitely had the feeling that I started at a certain point, but it was just such a small part, and I had an idea of the whole, and it could only develop in time. When I started with the architecture series, for example, I had for years the feeling that it's not balanced. I had a list of works that I wanted to depict, and when it was done, I had the feeling, now it's balanced and not one-sided anymore. What I mean is that in the beginning of something, there is a certain fakeness because you have to shine to be someone that you're not in that moment because it lays in the future. You can't prove it yet. So there is always this aspect of projecting something that people might not understand, or that you behave strangely because you have a certain idea about how something should come out, but you can't communicate it because only the product itself will represent the act of communication. This was always my problem with writing scripts. We talked about it when I said I decided to write the script early in the morning because I wanted to have this unconscious process being a part of the work. I think the next work will go that way again, but this time only with dialogues and not only statements.
Good. And you said as a young artist, you need to prove yourself for yourself, not only for those who look at you. You need to prove because you had no record before to show that you're trustable or that you're what you're promised. But if we are looking at your platform at the moment, you already have proven record.
I would like to continue about camera work, that it is a fluid and moving system between you and the world, and you have to connect to the camera, and the camera connects to the world. It takes place in the present. It has to be on the spot. It needs all the energy and all the concentration that you have. From the beginning, this aspect of camera work was my anchor to the world that supposedly was fake or wasn't real. But then through the camera and by the documentation of little pieces of time, I got a means to keep myself out of insanity. This is really true.
And I fully understand.
And in this way, it's what Freud said. The artist cures his neurosis himself. But on the other hand, I am not interested in keeping up my neurosis just to be an artist. I hate this kind of art that is only neurotic.
Right, or just a remedy for neurosis. Let's stick to the essences of your theory about camera, the three parts, and the fact that the camera is doomed to depict the surface, and then somehow the content is being reconstructed from the way the frame is built.
Yes, but the content is the surface.
The surface that creates in our brain a reconstruction of the depth behind the surface.
But this is why the camera image is so composed. When you use it just as a window into the world and hold it there because you think it's my eye, then you're on the wrong track. In a lot of films, the camera behaves as if it's not there, and I don't want that. I want that everybody knows that it is there. Sometimes when I look at my films and when I read the date when I was at a certain place, then I think at least this little piece of time was not useless. It's proof that I was there, I was not in the clouds or insane. You said, put your negative thoughts in the background, it's too much in the foreground. But how do I succeed in keeping them there? It seems as if a new way of thinking has to take over to avoid these dead-end streets of criticism.
I was suggesting not to deal with not thinking of those aspects or of trying to annihilate their venom, but to concentrate on the opposite. And the fact that you shift your focus to concentrate and focus on what you have achieved and what you are satisfied with is a kind of technique of not focusing on this. Because there aren't in our brain two focuses at the same time. You can either focus on this or on that.
So, the idea to develop a technique to avoid this negative streak is not the right thing to do. It's just to replace it by another activity.
Yes, this is how our psyche is working.
But then there are always the ways of how you dealt with it before, and you have to interrupt those conventions of thinking.
Yes, it doesn't mean that you will not be attracted from time to time to those aspects. It's not annihilating them, but they will not be in the stage all the time without this alternative. Memories, even terrible ones, are important to be there and become a ladder from the pit to something else. You know that the monster is there, but it turned into stone. So when you enter a certain room, you will see those monsters as sculptures, but not being alive. You will have a kind of feeling when you see them because you know the interaction with them in the past, but they are not active anymore.
One could say I have to take the authority away. I always gave them too much authority.
Precisely, and it's high time at this specific junction that you take the authority onto yourself, and you might even enjoy it. This and the fact that you search for new things is a point of departure, with a quiet voice that says, I want to evolve. So even the pressure to create is not as it used to be.
I had the idea of a very special camera work for this dialogue. I want to place two people in a kind of road movie in unusual surroundings without narrating why they're there. They're just having a dialogue, perhaps a very long one. I want a camera that starts with these people and then the camera is moving away from them. Let's say we are two actors standing here. I would start with the dialogue, doing portraits or showing this room. And then suddenly the camera wanders off out of the window on the street and comes back.
And they're still talking in the background.
Yes, the wandering camera should be an entity in itself, a third person. The camera is not my eye, it is not your eye, it is a third part, even showing interesting scenes on the street or wherever.
In relation to the dialogue?
It may even have nothing to do with it. You hear the dialogue and then the camera comes back and it's a simultaneous thing happening. I think it's an interesting idea because the film is called Streetscapes. It's about writing and language and streets. The idea of the dialogue is something new, and the idea of the camera, too, being a third person who has an interest in itself and playing a part in it. We hear the dialogue, and we have to think about what they're saying. But I don't want to illustrate what they're talking about. I want to go another way with the images, maybe even a contradiction to their situation. This sounds a bit loose, but for me it's a beginning. It's an experiment. Will it hold up? What are they talking about? Of course, it should have to do with an analytic process, otherwise it doesn't make sense. They don't tell each other jokes or stories or something.
It should be a dialogue with an intended content.
To find out something from each other.
Let's examine the experience of the audience when they see the film. When the camera is on the protagonists, it will enhance the experience of listening to the dialogue. But then when the camera is going to wander around, something different will happen. The dialogue is in the background, continuing with its direction, but eyewitnessing things is stronger than the voice. At a certain point, when the camera is wandering, we as the audience are going to have a split experience.
It could be very disturbing. In film, there's always the dominance of the visual, but then there is the dominance of language, too. Language and the linearity of language and how it evolves and how it interacts is very strong. You can show the contrary and you don't believe it when you hear somebody telling you what's important or not. But this kind of dialogue will not be about being important or not. I even think, like here in the room, it could look here, or it could look there, or there.
Like a wandering mind.
And you might wonder why. Does it have a meaning that the camera now looks at the ceiling? As an onlooker, you might even identify with this third agent, walking away or coming back. It's very important to have this simultaneous action. Of course, when you see something and hear something, you always connect it. The street life, or maybe it's in a hotel, in a lobby, or somewhere in a department store, I want them to talk all the time. I want to have it very loose, but the dialogue keeps everything together. This is the idea somehow. Now I told you the whole film. So did we solve everything?
There is a platform.
I wonder what will hold up from this project. I have the tendency to talk a lot about future films with the aim to talk them away so that I could do something else without having to do them anymore.
I think the main thing is for you to write the dialogue, because once this is done, then you already almost have the film.
So what do we do now?
You look miserable. We can make a break and eat something.
I'm not hungry. Are you hungry?
No,
It can't be true that we're through with it.
it's not untrue. Especially yesterday was very important. Although you were feeling like shit in the end.
So where does that come from? I mean, this doesn't seem...
Welcome to the understanding that our existence is not in a logical, well-reasoned world. It has probably an inner drama in it that we cannot fully understand. It's irrational. I wonder if there is something that you feel worth looking at after your operation.
You mean my health? Well, I'm still incontinent. It may hinder my film work, and I am a bit afraid of that, but I don't want to make it a topic, really, because it's the situation, and I have to deal with it.
And you are dealing with it?
Yes. After a while, I thought, well, this is the situation, and I can't behave as if I'm sick all the time. But it was interesting that it came with a depression. We sometimes mention the banality of certain blocks in our talks. When you look at it from the outside, it might sound almost crazy why somebody is hindered so much by something. In a rational way, there's always this sense that it might be totally banal what hinders you. And looking back to it, you might say, what was this?
Yes, but banality is when you read this in a newspaper about someone. Then it looks really banal. But when it's your own story, where you're the protagonist and you feel the great impact it has on every moment of your life, on your self-definition and existence, then you forget about the banality. It's present.
But couldn't it fade into a kind of banality, that you went through it and you feel that it lost its impact? I mean, this would be an aim of what we're doing now.
Especially when there is a blockade. A blockade is something very dangerous in all terms, physical or psychological. In terms of crisis, even things that might look banal are important. I don't care about their banality, because what's important is to prevent self-poisoning. This is first. Sometimes the aim is not for a total recovery. Sometimes when you remove the rock, there is a path, and then you hope that your patient would be able to continue the journey by himself. Does it resonate in you, what I said?
I can see the way. Maybe we should stop for today.
Are you sure? It's up to you. I create a framework, it's a container. You can use from it what's needed.
In the moment, I don't feel a need to continue. I'll think it over and maybe I come tomorrow with a bunch of pressing issues.
And we still have another meeting after the shooting.
That would be good.
And then we will have an experience of the shooting, and you will be able to look at yourself and see how you're responding to the filming.
I go to Washington. I have a presentation and Q&A in the National Gallery. They do a retrospective for the whole month, but I'm only there for the beginning. We'll have a discussion about the Los Ornamental.
It's a nice journey since we talked in Berlin. You came to the hotel and we said, this must be done. You remember?
And then the crisis came, the prize. I dedicated it to my grandfathers who died in World War I. Usually you dedicate it to your family.
What was their response?
A little bewildered.
When you see the causes of the First World War, one representative was martyred and it became a license for millions of killings. This was the medieval in the middle of the Enlightenment period.
Millions just slaughtered. Lately, my godson took me to a lecture on the anniversary of the outbreak of World War I by this English historian from Cambridge. It was just about the sensitivities of a certain class of people in Europe who actually started the war. They were all from the same family and should have gone to family therapy, but instead they killed off their proletarians. This was the outcome, that they got rid of the social movement and it turned into this nationalistic bullshit and nationalist and reactionary parties. But he was discussing national guilt. No, Germany is not so guilty anymore. Maybe France is a little more guilty, and then England is a little more guilty.
It was bullshitting.
Yes. What about the class war?
Yes. Actually, my first research was about shell shock. They didn't know what to do sitting in the trenches, just for staying and killing each other. When there is this order, attack, you need to leave the trench, run into the open, and get shot by
machine guns. Totally crazy. They thought the war would be over after 6 months. They believed in this blitzkrieg thing. And then after 6 months, they started to invent gas and other kinds of weapons for the trench war.
I'm not bullshitting it with who is more guilty than the other. The Kaiser was absolutely crazy, and the whole family around him.
They were all nephews and nieces. The Tsar, the English king and queen, and the outcome was the Second World War and all the methods of killing masses of people. Absolutely crazy.
So, another day.
This morning was a perfect example of how things can go wrong. I thought the trip to Washington is totally useless.
You feel reluctant to go there.
Every time I'm invited to accompany my films, I have to force myself to do it. I already feel that it must be a nuisance that somebody has to look after me. So this is the kind of feeling I had this morning, that the day will end in a complicated situation and then the whole trip there for 12 hours and just
now, let's analyze this a bit, because you said it yourself, it's an example of a situation where you not necessarily want to be in. And again, you have two options. One is practical and one is emotional. The practical is if you want to be economic with your energy, that you must become more strict within what you're going to invest your energy.
I should deal with it on a practical level and just go.
Go, do your thing without too much involvement, and that's it. And that is the second option that I was going to offer. You need to recruit in yourself the right attitude without too much emotional price. This should be a paradigm for sometimes when you feel you need to be there and not necessarily would have liked to do it. You need to elicit in yourself a certain kind of emotional response which will make it easier for you to go.
It shouldn't get so much weight, but it did this morning because I thought this is so
useless.
I thought about our discussion yesterday. It was a bit on the manic side. That could be a danger sign.
But the importance of it was that you felt much better and you had a glimpse of what it can look like when you have a new touch to energy.
I'm suspicious about this feeling good all over,
Do you know why you're suspicious?
because this kind of enthusiasm might fall apart.
That is one thing. The other is that feeling good is not something that is well established within your repertoire.
That's true. And then an upcoming trip like this always has absurd aspects. It's heavily anonymous. I don't know the people there. I don't know what they expect. But then I ask myself, is that my problem? No. If they decide to do the program, it's their problem.
Problem and responsibility.
Yes, but you take it on you. There is an audience. You always have to deal with how they will project the film. I was in situations where it was not shown right, but the audience thought this is the right thing, and then you have to talk about something that hasn't been shown. Even if you say, well, I shouldn't care so much, when you're there, it is your responsibility.
Yes, and you can't avoid it, I agree.
They spend so much money on the trip and the hotel, but shall I feel guilty about it? No.
No, you're on the carousel, you're invited.
You know, these cultural institutions, they make a fuss, they invite you to dinner, and then you sit there with some politicians or someone.
And you have to do the play.
Do I really have to?
How long you're staying there?
3 full days. I have a bad feeling that a German cultural institution is involved. I once was blacklisted by them for at least 10 years. That was an outcome of a very strange event. I filmed Normalsatz in New York in the late 70s, and a friend of mine acts in it. And in the first scene of the film, you can see her. She was working in those days as a receptionist in a brothel. The premiere of the film took place in a cinema, and the head of the German Institute came to the show. My friend saw the guy coming into the space, and she asked me, "Who is this guy?" And I said, "It's the head of the German Institute." She said, "Then you will have a problem." The film started, and he saw her on the screen and immediately left the space. I asked her, "Do you know that guy?" And she said, "Yes."
One of the visitors.
He was always coming to the brothel to beat up black women, but he pretended to be an important businessman on his way to South America.
That was his cover story.
Yes, his cover was blown by this film premiere, so they didn't show my films anymore for some time.
It's absurd because it has nothing to do with you.
Of course, but now I knew about him, and he didn't want to have me around.
What a story. This could be a film for itself.
I will not do it.
And do you have any apprehensions towards meeting them in Washington?
No, but they will. It takes place in their venue, and I have to go there.
Will they force you to mingle with them a bit?
I'll find out when I'm at the hotel. I hope they leave me alone. I am a bit afraid of the forthcoming filming in Israel, of the circumstances of the shoot, not the shoot itself. Every social aspect around it makes me nervous. I hate the work before the first image is done. It's so absurd that you organize so much stuff and there is no product. The sense is always deriving from the product, but you have to do a lot before. Social gathering, that makes me nervous.
Could we speak about the reason of your fears with the shooting?
Let me be very basic. I have to rent a car. I will drive to Tel Aviv airport in the afternoon, pick up my assistant, then we drive to the north. It will be a Friday, so Shabbat will come up, and I don't know whether we make it until the sun is going down. We might arrive late at the kibbutz, the gate might be closed, so what do we do? Of course, I will call G, but maybe she doesn't pick up the phone.
A bit of facts. If the gate is closed, then either there will be a guard or there will be a small box that you can call to someone who is in charge, and you will say, I'm this, and I'm invited by G.
There will be a little concrete hut they have as a guest house where we will stay, but I don't know whether we will stay in Ein Harod.
This will be the center.
We will have to travel to the south, too. I am a bit afraid that the people we meet do not really know that we have to work fast. They might think we will have a meeting and eat or drink coffee, sit down and talk about the project. But I have to go around the whole place to see how the light is unfolding during the day. It's not much time that we have, and they might be antagonized by our pressure. If they want me to sit down, I will be very nervous because I can't do my work. And then my medical condition. I always have to go to some kind of loop. I don't know how it will unfold, but my fear is not what I'm going to film and how to film it.
That's very good. One thing that you say constantly is that you're very sure about the work of yours, and all the fears about the handling of the situations is, of course, understood.
It's normal.
It's more than normal, very normal.
Sometimes you can deal with it better than in other times, but basically when I film, I get a strong notion of pieces of time. I know exactly I have this span of time, can be divided into always smaller pieces of time, and then into the pieces that you record. It's as if time is a material and you can divide it like material. It's a different experience of time than the usual time, and this can't be communicated very well. I have to focus from one shot to the other, and I have to complete the whole shoot in one location. That has to be performed in a short time span, and you can't interrupt that. There has to be done this new film day after day, from morning to night. After a couple of days, there is always the point of exhaustion, and I get doubts whether I will function right. It depends on the locations. It depends on how much we have to travel, how many objects we have to film. There's a lot of
Open end.
G wanted to send me the data for the whole trip, all the locations, plans, and photographs. She didn't, which is fine because I'm not really curious about them. I think it's important to look at the places as they look the day we are there. I don't want to film a plan or photographs. Sometimes people don't understand that because they think one is not interested in it, but that's not true. It's more being interested in how it looks today, and I have to be open to that and not to something else.
Yes, and sometimes people not only don't understand it, but take it as disrespect, which is wrong. So the more you communicate about your specific kind of work and even exaggerate.
In every place, of course, we have to find a kind of infrastructure with electricity and all our equipment, making backups and so on. We have to find out very fast how each place works.
Do you also have lighting?
No. I want to use the light that is there and film where it's possible to film and don't film where it's not possible. There is enough to film anyway. When you set up your lights, first you change the natural surroundings and you change the light. I just decide where it's possible to shoot. You know in your brain where.
It's in the same philosophy that you want to use natural sound.
Yes. The architects themselves cared for the lighting situation and how they placed the building. But then I have to be aware of the sun and how the light will change during the day. You decide in the beginning of the shoot where to start, where to end.
It was carefully tuned in the Perret film. I remember I was amazed by it, both the lighting and the sound. What do staircases convey to you?
A staircase?
Yes, I think you have a specific dialogue
A
with...
staircase deals a lot with the human body because the height of the steps is exactly what we can manage to get from one level to another. It's a human device to enter different spaces, and it allows a lot of different views between different levels. You can choose to go half up, you look back, you look up, or you look down. You change your perspective all the time when you're on a staircase. It's a very cinematographical object in terms of using it and in terms of looking at it.
Yes.
It's double-sided, and it's always promising something. If there is a stair, there is a next level. And of course, in film, it's used to introduce a new space. But the most moving aspect of the staircase is the step. The step is modeled after the abilities of our body to climb. Each step is a remembrance of what we can do and that we can go forward or backward. It's a very complicated and almost philosophical object.
I thought you have a kind of attraction to it.
Yes. There are such great ways of building stairs, and especially Perret built these fantastic staircases.
I'm listening to you, and it's impossible not to sense that you have a special kind, which is almost a gift of sensitivity towards this kind of thing.
As long as I can remember, spaces had something that was special for me. I felt really awful in them, or I liked them. Architectural spaces speak to me. It took me a long time to find out that people have different experiences with spaces. Some people just walk through them and they take no notice of them.
No sensor inside.
Everybody has a different feeling of a given space. At first, you think everybody has the same, and then you realize that you sense something very different than another person does. I like complicated spaces. The notion that people have totally different experiences with spaces was very strange. We have to translate spaces for each other. I remember when we started to play filmmaking. I had no camera, but I took a shoebox and the core of a toilet paper roll, and I placed it as a lens into it and looked through it. That was my first camera.
And you play with other children?
Yes, we played filmmaking.
So it was within you from early childhood. Did you see any films then?
Every Sunday. There were 2 movie houses in this little town. A lot of war movies, American B movies.
So actually you were fascinated by this medium.
Until I was 14.
But you didn't abandon the medium that was so attractive.
No.
Although they are fake, those films.
I even liked the films best that made no mystery out of being fake.
Has your camera a microphone built in?
Yes, the sound of the camera is only that little piece that you filmed. Of course, the sequence is longer than that, and we take additional sound from all camera angles. We first edit picture only.
This is the basis.
Yes, the picture. Eventually, we work with different layers of sound and then mix them together. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 films in different stages being worked on at the same time. The production of these architecture films turned into a kind of factory.
I wonder how you manage the fact that on the one hand you have a lot of emotional and philosophical content-wise aspects, and at the same time lots of technical issues.
I was always on the side of composing and constructing images. I was always interested in the result and not in the technique, because I just wanted to use it.
You don't worship the technology.
No. They can talk as much as they want about the machinery. The result is always what tells the story. The trick with filmmaking is that you have to work with people who understand your way of working and respect it.
You remember Blow Up by Antonioni, which is another poem for photography in itself?
My favorite film by him is La Notte. What he does with architecture is amazing. He had a very subversive sense of how to smuggle scenes into his films under the cover of story, and suddenly something completely else happens. I like that a lot. But that's a kind of filmmaking that's out today.
Because the studios are only interested in blockbusters.
Or even the TV stations or whoever might care about films. So much bullshit is being done. Even the independent film scene, it's always the same story.
Let's go back to your dreams. Can you share some with me?
War dreams. Being in the trenches of World War I. That was in the 80s, a recurrent one.
Really? So you were grown up already?
Yes. A recurrent situation, totally no way out. Imprisoned in the trenches with the bombardments and no chance to get out of the situation. And then I had a lot of dreams of being decapitated. There's a certain machine that cuts paper in a publishing house.
A guillotine.
Yes, and you have to press 2 buttons so that you don't lose your arms when it comes down. I had the fantasy to place my head under the machine like this.
Those fantasies appear relatively late. You were grown up already. Were you interested in history, French Revolution, where they used the guillotine?
No, it had more to do with World War I and with the Nazi regime. They used the guillotine, too.
The Nazis? I didn't know.
There's a prison in Berlin where they decapitated the political prisoners. When I learned about the French Revolution, the guillotine appeared almost normal to me. I never had the fantasy that my own head would be decapitated by it. That appeared much later and had to do with a wish not to be conscious.
You emphasize the desire not to be conscious and not the desire to be dead. It's different. It's not necessary that you want to die. It has to do with the fact that you didn't want to sense or feel.
Yes, that is the case. It would be good to find a way to avoid that, or put it, as you said, in the background.
And eventually to exercise some kind of control that you change foreground and background. This is something that you can do because you have the skill for it in film as well. Because you have it as almost an instinct, you can use it as a skill to send it to the background.
You mean in terms of a space or an image of something? When you say background, foreground, I imagine a space as if certain thoughts inhabit a space, like a space.
And you actually send them aside.
So each of my films has a backstory. Normalsatz, for example, has this one. I always encountered social scenes in the beginning of the 70s when I came to the States where a group of young people of my age met and were talking about TV series, situation comedies, soap operas, and they were communicating through these means. I didn't understand one word because we didn't have TV series in those days. So I felt estranged because I saw how well they communicated. It's an abbreviation system. They quoted something and then they knew. One of my friends in the States is a TV critic. So I said to him, write me a text, an analysis of certain shows, but you must be sure that I don't understand one word of it. And then I will transfer that into a kind of scene where people talk with each other. So I did that. When you're traumatized with a certain situation and you reenact it, it's clearing the situation. Although I'm not sure whether I got very far.
Clearing, you mean cathartic?
Yes, or you suddenly understand.
You want to drink something?
Maybe water.
Just water, not tea or coffee?
Maybe coffee, or is that too much?
Sure. Why should it be too much?
I don't know.
Finally, you wanted someone to treat you and then...
The time was rushing by today. I wonder what will happen. I'm looking forward to the filming in Israel. I'm not so curious about Washington.
You will gain your curiosity during the flight or when you land. What are you going to do with the recording?
I take it with me. Maybe I listen to it in the hotel.
Good.
When you asked me questions about the technique, you said, you're thinking about film and philosophizing about it, and you're doing pictures, and then you have this whole apparatus there and care for it. And I answered, well, I'm not really interested in that. I want to add something to that now. For me, it's very important that this work does not only have a theoretical outcome, but you actually have an object that you can look at. The material, and to work on the material, to work with imagery and sound is the integral part of the process. Otherwise, I would have the feeling this all makes no sense. This is just another theory.
And another arrangement of narrative which you don't like. Or the feeling it's arranged too educational in a way, right?
No. The process of working with the material is important. We have to deal with it, and then it turns into something else. You sit at home and you work with these little images that you've shot, and you arrange them. And suddenly out of that, a new kind of reality evolves. It's a very strange and powerful moment, and it's important that this happens. This is the reason why I don't like conceptual art, where you just have a concept and you don't have to realize it anymore because everything is already in the concept. I need the object. The truth lays in the object.
That's an important clarification. I suggest you have a kind of evaluation after almost 3 weeks that we met, and then you're filming in Israel.
It was very helpful that we talked about camera work and what is my position when I do the camera in relation to the world and in relation to the people who are around. G organized the filming in Israel very well. We worked hard and very efficiently. So in terms of doing a recapitulation of our work, I can say I had a very positive approach to it.
In contrary to your worries, how was Washington?
There was a very attentive audience. The room was fully packed. We had a Q&A of more than an hour. I had a good time. Also, I didn't get jet lag when I went there, and I didn't get jet lag when I came back. Usually when I come back from the States, I'm beaten for 2 weeks. Now I didn't even realize it because I had to start working in Israel immediately. I just worked and slept, and this is what I like most.
And you slept well, as you said.
Yes, no problem at all. I had an apartment at the kibbutz. We had breakfast in one of those little huts there, and then we started. The project was very important for me, even the physical stress of it when we worked for 10 hours a day in the heat. And I got another idea for the film about a dialogue for two people. I had wanted to do a film about Eladio Diesta, the Uruguayan shell builder. But now I thought we should combine both projects, and we will shoot the dialogue film in all the locations of Diesta. We can explore the buildings, and there is a subtext to all this. This is something like a solution. It's not an abrupt stopping with the architecture series. But it sounds too logical for me now. We talked about that too. The destructive moments happen in not such a controlled way. I fear a bit coming back to the scene of that misery, and that is Berlin for me. It was very good that I was just on the road. I take every chance to stay away from Berlin.
Well, I think Berlin as a symbol is an important issue. I think the challenge now is that you will do your creative things not as a kind of reaction. In other words, your work, your writing, your drawing, especially the film will not come from a kind of evasiveness, from not flying away from your moods or depression. And I think the sign that you're successful in stopping this is that Berlin will not be a symbol of not wanting to be there. Berlin became for you a symbol charged with everything bad in terms of your moods. And when it will not be charged and you will look at it as another base to either be there or not be there, well, this will be a sign that, well, you see what I'm referring to?
Yes. The whole post-production of the films, the editing, and so on has to take place there. But as I described before, the main core of filmmaking is to be on the spot somewhere else and creating new material.
Again, I want to emphasize that an ideal situation is that you will do all your creative things, not as a result of a mechanism of flying away.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm talking about a sense of inner peace, a sense of inside integration. Although it might deal sometimes with positive tension, like in new ideas, but not as a result of flying away from past ghosts. You have a good spirit about what you're doing. It even makes you more resilient to outside conditions, heat and so on. But to use another metaphor, it's as if the first thing we did was cleaning the pipes, but it's not enough. We need to have the generator working well, so it's not relying on unfortunate energy.
Yes, I know. There is something manic about it when you get into the production process, and then you might fall back into the old depression again. But when you go into production, you have to be in a maniacal mood. And this is, of course, habit forming in a certain way. You get addicted to this manic phase because you can work and concentrate so well. But then you know it will fall apart again. But when you mentioned inner peace and feeling well in relation to what I do have that feeling when I work. But there were difficult moments. There were interesting people in the kibbutzim, and I would have liked to know more about their history. They were all from Eastern Europe, intellectual backgrounds, Russia, Poland, Germany, out of the socialist movements. Everybody has a lot to tell. Everybody has to tell how it fell apart.
And consuming narratives of those people telling compelling stories be incorporated as well. I know it's a different issue, but it might add a lot to whatever is behind the spirit of the architecture that's involved.
I think it's necessary to get away from the topic of the architect as a lonely hero who decides everything by himself. There was a big phase of trophy houses and trophy skyscrapers and this kind of stuff, but architects get socially more involved again. I think this film might lead to discussions about this, and then other people continue with this work. You will see there is an embodiment of a social idea in these buildings, and then you have to discuss it when you see how it looks today. But I will not include so-called talking heads. The other fear was that my physical condition would interfere with the work, but it didn't. It got better during the time, so I'm on the right track, I think.
You are. You had a lot of worries that you shared with me here before, because you have also a tendency to create, horror shows before doing things. What I still would like to insist on is to make sure, if it's possible, that when you're not doing any of the stuff, either production, filming, post-production, writing a script, or wherever, when you're with yourself, thinking or just being, there will be a kind of safety net that you will not fall under. I want to make sure this actually happens.
But how can we be sure of that? That's the crucial point.
Well, there are signs that this kind of net is there, but you need to feel it. I wonder how you can become aware of it. In other words, it's just something you can, in bad times, lean on and it holds you.
The mind is a tricky thing. You might even know about the process and it happens anyway. You might feel it coming and trying to avoid it, and it's still coming. And then the process takes over.
I think we have covered a few things that are anchors of this safety net. The fact that we've met, the fact that you yourself dedicated such a time for it, it's something important.
Maybe I'll even write it down.
What, the script of it?
Yes, to work on it, to think about it. I have the time now, and for me, it's top priority.
I agree, it should be.
To continue with the films will be a pleasure, but this is the core project.
Do you envision of what would be the effect if the second person of the dialogue would be a woman rather than a man?
I don't know why.
Perhaps you can bring another layer to the dialogue, intellectually and emotionally?
Until now, I only thought there should be a difference in age. One should be younger, one should be older.
Who's the older?
The younger one should be the analyst, and the older one should be the analysand.
Oh, that's nice.
This is the only idea I had about their differences. Carola Renier would have been perfect for this, but she's dead. It's amazing with dead people. Sometimes I wake up and think, now I call her, and suddenly I realize she's dead.
I have second thoughts about this transformation. It might not be right. Actually, the dialogue originally took place between two men, so why should I act as one of them?
Do you think we should stop?
It's up to you. As for this project, I suggest that you will listen to it. Perhaps you extract of what you hear, or if you want to script it.
I will send it to you when I do that, because reading is even better than listening.
I agree. Text is very important. I feel this is a kind of closure of this project, which is needed. I think we established some anchors towards this end, but you need to feel it inside you.
I thought nothing happened in this year, but a lot of things happened. Even my physical condition was a part of it. It was good that it happened then and not on a shooting trip. It would have been a total disaster.
This is sheer luck. Tomorrow you will fly back?
Yes. I told you that I wanted to write down our conversations. It was very good to listen and actually write them down.
And you did it?
I can finish it within the next month and send it to you.
And was it interesting for you to go over that?
Oh, very interesting. And I thought already to use parts of our conversation, especially when we talk about filmmaking. I will work on that and send it to you, and you will say what you think of it. We always came back to certain topics in a different way. There is this recurring theme: how can this good feeling last? By the way, last month my idea of death changed. Last year I was suicidal, but I was totally afraid of death because I thought, no, not in this situation. Now I feel okay with it. I don't want to kill myself, but I would feel,
More peaceful.
well, when it happens, it happens. That was not the case last year. I wanted to be dead, but I feared that it could happen. That's different.
Yes, chiasma.
Very different. Now I got the feeling that we mapped it out. I'm totally eager to go into these projects.
Well, one of the things I need to add in terms of perspective is that what we did was not only mapping.
It's true, it's not only mapping, but for me, making plans is something important. It gives me the feeling of a structure for the future. There are these 4 long films that will be finished within the next year. I decided that we film the Diesta architecture first without actors and then decide in which location we will continue. So it all fell into place. I got the idea to release all 4 films together because they belong together. They deal with streets and dialogue and architecture. When these 2 guys talk about the film within the film, they will talk about the other films too. You show the result, and one could make a great combination of talk and non-talk.
Mm-hmm. It will be a self-conscious film. There aren't many self-conscious films. I always thought it would be very intriguing and productive genre. It's usually using a kind of comedy.
With bits of psychoanalysis. They're always making fun of it in films. There's a shrink and ha 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 and
That's
stuff.
bullshit.
But to use the media itself for self-reflecting itself, they talk about the film and you think, what film are they talking about? Perhaps people will think it's boring, but I don't care because there should be talking about what actually takes place. You know I have no fantasy. I always use what happens. I might even have a structure of a week. There is Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or something. I might use that as titles for the chapters. It will be hard work with the actors because you can't act spoken words. Looks almost ridiculous when they say, oh, I think, and all this.
It should be a kind of intellectual.
They will not reenact the exact spoken words because that would be just awkward. It should be a worked out text.
They will not play.
No. Usually dialogues only have a certain amount of time, but I really want to stress that it goes on and on and on so that there will not be the idea that the happy end is near.
Well, I like it already that there is no immediate conclusion.
You have to go into the process. If you don't want to, leave the cinema.
By the way, I'm writing now something about the reciprocality of mental representations. The idea is that in situations like relationships and emotional states, for an understanding where the other is located, the conventional speaking words are not enough, because words per se are just what I term a thing representation. Thing representation is when you have a word for it, but if you come to complex concepts or ideas, let's take for example the word disaster, and you want people from different disciplines who deal with disaster to meet, they will understand the word, but they will not create the kind of internal representation of what they are really talking about. And this can only be achieved when we get in some kind of situation where they have an experience of it, like simulation and doing something with more depth. And this kind of context and additional experiences around the concept or around the word is what I call a thick representation. It has many layers in it which allow you to actually form a kind of representation yourself about where the other is. And I think in this kind of analysis, it's basis for real relationships because you can relate to somebody else on to a complex situation only when you have some kind of a thicker representation in yourself, which cannot be explained just by words, but something else. We come to a different kind of understanding it.
It reminds me of something.
I think it's somehow related to what we talked about representation in film, because you want to use architecture and weave it in, because it's a kind of dialogue, both relationship of something which is ideas about and, in effect, representation.
I have to tell you another incident from my childhood. I always had punctured eardrums, and that's why I was so catatonic, and the world was so enclosed for me. I couldn't put my head under water. I had extreme pain in my head, so I was always living in a kind of cloud.
Did it heal eventually?
No, but in my early 30s, I decided to learn how to swim, so I had my eardrums operated on. They take little pieces of skin from behind the ear and plant them inside. A friend of mine was a professional swimmer and trained me how to swim. He had a book about swimming styles with photographs, and on them you could see the movements in split seconds progression. He said, you have to internalize these images, and then you can do the movement, which is true. First, you have to learn how to breathe, and then you have to coordinate the breathing with the movements. The process of the inner envisioning of the movements was very important, that you could see yourself from the inside, what you called a thick representation. It's a very interesting process.
It is. Was the operation successful?
Yes. I hope I find my other glasses.
You misplaced them, obviously, within the complex where you live.
We went to a restaurant last night. They're very small frames, and perhaps I left them there. They're hard to see.
They're for close or for distant? Do you have a prescription of it?
For Farsight.
Oh, they can make new ones here very quickly.
No, I fly back tomorrow. So this turned into a very strange project.
Yes, with many layers. What kind of language do you want to use in the film?
English. No German allowed. No German actors allowed either. But they might talk about Germany as if they know it by heart. They do it in Uruguay.
Nobody knows why in Uruguay out of all.
Of course, because the buildings are so wonderful.
Actually, the context will remain vague, which is good.
It shouldn't be based on nationality, although they might talk about nationality. Perhaps we should stop. What do you think?
It's up to you.
I think I've told you everything.
Whenever you feel something that changes, you will give me a call. Sometimes it's just a flicker. If you feel that it wasn't a flicker, but it stays, then we should deal with it immediately.
I waited too long last year. I will not show the Le Corbusier film to the producers before it's finished. If they don't like it, I don't care. I can't do another film. An important part of our discussions was to say you don't have to prove yourself every time again. You don't have to prove that you're actually there and that you can do it. It's a very important thing because I don't get hysterical about anything anymore.
This is a sharp contrast to where you were shooting normal sets when you were catatonic. I mean, you have done a long journey since.
They approached me and said, we want you to do this film. Do you want to do it? And I said, well, it costs so and so much. Then they said, we will find the money. And they found the money and said, now you can do it. And I said, okay, I will do it. And now they have to live with the result. Oh, I lost the crystal from my watch. And the hands are now gone.
Okay, it's 12 o'clock.